Hi, everyone. It is now 10:30, and we do not have everybody with us yet, but I've never believed in punishing those who are on time for those who are tardy. And so we're going to begin right now. We do have actually 100 people who are signed up and who have been sent to the link to attend this meeting today. I am Les Marsden, and I'm the outgoing president of Yosemite Gateway Partners, and I just really wanted to begin by welcoming you all this morning and to thank you for being with us and for supporting this organization. Um, the 3 points that I wanted to go over initially this morning is first our mission statement, which you can now see on your screen. It's a very important organization, and it goes back to about 2003. Um, there had not been really any other organization of its nature in any of the national parks. We have come close with Great Smoky, and others are using our example. But to let you know how important it is, you can see the various organizations that consider it critical to come together for the gateways all to get along, for us to cooperate with the park and vice versa, with the concessionaire and with our partners, which includes all of you. I won't read the mission statement for you because it's right there in front of you, but you can see what we do, and I really do encourage everybody to continue to support this organization with your presence. We are not a member organization. We do not charge dues. The very few ways that we raise income to keep the organization going are through our sponsorships, through ads in our newsletter, which reach out to about 1,000 recipients, individual email recipients, which does not mean it's only going to a single person at each email address. But that's a pretty large reach that we have, and it is, after all, the most important reach for your personal or business message, your neighbors, the people right around you. Again, Cole, if you could go to the next screen, please. This is our core values, and again, I will not read it, but I would like to also thank Cole Prisabella, who is one of our board directors and who is serving as our technical host this morning to keep everything rolling along. As was in my message to you all with this link, we are going to have everybody on mute simply because it's impossible not to. And if you have any questions, you can join the chat, throw any kind of a comment into the entire party as a whole or to individual people on the screens. When we have our two presentations, I'm sure that you will have questions for both Warren Alford and his team, as well as for Cicely Muldoon and her team. We're going to try to keep this meeting in its entirety down to an hour and a half, which means I'm going to stop talking really soon. I would encourage you to check out our website. And if you have any questions, you can reach us at info@YosemiteGatewayPartners.org. And at this point, I would simply like to thank everybody for the support that I have had over these past 3 years as your president. I've been on the board for 5 years, and I have one more year remaining, but I said, I really want to take it easy for that last year. I've it's time for me to get out of the way and make somebody else have the opportunity to lead and get some fresh ideas. And I'm very, very delighted to present to you all this morning Mr. Jeff Gabriel, who we are pleased to have as our brand new president, effective as soon as I say so, which is right now. So Jeff, Mr. President, it's all yours. Thank you, everyone. Take it.
Great, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Hopefully. First, before I say anything, I would like to take the time to again thank Les. His leadership over the last 3 years has been phenomenal and greatly appreciated. And so, to you, my stage friend, bravo.
Thank you, Jeff.
So thank you, Les. And again, I'm very honored to be selected or elected to the position. So I would say to everyone, if you have any ideas or thoughts, please reach out to myself or any of the other board members that are on the Yosemite Gateway Partners board. This is an organization, as Les said, is for the benefit of everyone that surrounds the Yosemite National Park, as well as the park itself. So as Les said, we want to keep moving. So I will turn it over to Jonathan to introduce our speakers. that we have. Jonathan?
Just unmuted you, Jonathan.
Okay. Well, you're putting me on the spot a little bit. I'm going to try to turn on my video. So I'd like to introduce Warren Alfred. Warren Alfred is the Public Affairs Officer for Caltrans District 10. We have a pretty major project coming up on Highway 140, the Ferguson Slide Project. It's really a very unique, groundbreaking project that will use some science and some technology that's never really been tried before. But not just 140 for all the gateways. We did ask and challenge Warren to do an update on all of the major roadway projects that might impact the gateways surrounding Yosemite. And so I'll turn it over to Warren, and thank you very much.
Okay, everybody can hear me. My name's Warren Alfred. I'm the Public Information Officer for Caltrans District 10. Maybe Les or Jonathan, you can give me a thumbs up if you can actually hear me. Great, okay. And thank you very much for giving us a chance to address this group. It's certainly helpful. Les, congratulations for your stepping down and Jeff taking over. We definitely appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all. We'll talk a little bit about projects that are going on in the region. As you're probably aware, Caltrans actually has 3 different districts that touch Yosemite. And it includes District 6, which has Highway 41 to the south, as well as District 9, which is to the east and includes the eastern portion of Tioga Pass and Route 120, as well as 395 that leads up to the park. And then District 10, which covers Tuolumne and Mariposa counties, as well as 6 other counties in California. So we have Route 120 west in Tuolumne County, and then primarily 140, as well as Highway 49 that leads into the park. We currently have, I reached out to our sister districts, and they report that we actually don't have any significant projects coming up on Highway 41, or 120 East or 395 in the next 12 to 18 months. So obviously there will be a routine maintenance. You'll see periodic lane closures there, but nothing of significance. So we're going to talk primarily about projects in District 10. On Highway 120 in Tuolumne County, as you're probably aware, we currently have a paving project that is nearing completion, going from Buck Meadows to the park boundary. And we've got another project that's actually going to be starting soon, starting from Moccasin, going up through Groveland. And essentially, we're going to have a brand new section of road from Moccasin to Yosemite by the end of this construction season. So that's what's happening in Tuolumne County. And now what I'd like to do is turn it over to Alan Lau, who's our project manager for the Ferguson project, and the rest of our team that'll talk about some projects that are happening there. We'll certainly be willing to take or happy to take questions at the end of the presentation. And if we aren't able to get to everything, we'll keep a list of the questions, and I'll try to follow up as best I can with anybody. So with that, Alan, I don't know if you can take over the screen and start our presentation, but Alan Lau will take it from here.
Thanks, Warren. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can share my screen here. I've got a PowerPoint to share. So if I can get permission to do that, I will get it up on the screen soon.
Hey, while you're doing that, am I still unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. I forgot to say, I actually worked for the Yosemite Park and Curry Company many moons ago. And I also have been a small business owner in Calaveras County. And so, you know, the unique needs of all of our gateway businesses and partners is something that I'm sensitive to. I know that you all are dealing with incredible stresses right now with this whole COVID-19 issue. And so, you know, that's in the back of our mind while we're thinking about all the projects that are coming up. And I just wanted to share that with you.
All right, thanks, Warren. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Alan Lau, the Caltrans project manager for the Ferguson Rockshed project. With me, I've got two project managers who will be helping me present several projects in Mariposa County. I've got Charlie Doe and Mimi Huey. So we've got 5 projects currently under development. These are projects not in construction, so you'll be seeing them within the next 1 to 3 years. Our three major paving projects are in the blue and purple and yellow stars. They total to about 53 miles of paving. Going on north on State Route 140, we've got a slope repair project, which we'll talk about first, and then we'll go to the Ferguson Rockshed project, which we'll talk about last. And so with that, I'll go ahead and let Charlie Doe present the first few projects. Charlie, are you unmuted here?
I'm looking for Charlie and all of the participants. Give me 1 second. There we go. And Charlie, you should be unmuted now.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. We have several projects that's going to be happening within the next 1 to 3 years in this area or in Mariposa County. First of all, I want to go over is a slope repair project. This is approximately 2 miles west of Will Creek Road near Briceburg. This project, we're anticipating construction beginning in the fall of 2021. So in terms of traffic impact, we will have K-rail set up to close the shoulder. So there should be slight traffic impact, but it's very minimal because of the K-rail that we can be utilizing. The number of working day for this project is about 60, so it's translated to about 3 months worth of construction. And again, the anticipated construction date is going to be fall 2021. So that's somewhat of a smaller project compared to the 3 CAP-M project that we are having within the next several years or so. I'll start with the first one. Is the project ID is 10-1C040. The project limit spanned from starting at the town of Mariposa all the way to the Mariposa and Madera County line. This is a pavement project, so we are gonna overlay the existing pavement with 2/10 of rubberized hot mix asphalt. The anticipated construction is going to be this fall of 2020. And depending on weather, if we have good weather, the construction is going to start. If if we have to winterize the project, most likely the construction is going to start in spring of 2021. With paving operation, we are going to be utilizing 1-lane traffic control. The duration of work is during nighttime, so it's going to be nighttime 1-way traffic control. Number of working day is about 160, so that span an entire construction season. So you're looking at the entire of 2021 for construction of this project. The next project that I'm going over is 0Y770. Again, this is another pavement project. We are overlaying the existing pavement with 2/10 of rubberized hot mix asphalt. The project start at Catty Valley and end past the town of Mariposa. This project, the scope of work is similar. We are going to overlay the existing pavement, replacing existing guardrail, roadway sign, restriping, rumble strip, and replacing dikes. Anticipated for construction is going to be in the spring of 2023. again, is going to be one-way traffic control. But in this project, it's going to be daytime when we have the one-way traffic control. Going through the town of Mariposa is going to be exclusively night work. The number of working day is about 300 due to some bridge work that we have to do. So it extends, the duration is longer than the previous project that I mentioned. And then we have one more project that kind of finish off 140, and that project belonged to our project manager, Mimi. So I'll have her go over that project with you guys.
Hey, Mimi, you should be unmuted.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you. So the last CAP-M project that is in this area is our project. It's 0Y780. It's a pavement preservation project. This pavement project proposes to overlay from East Whitlock Road to the entrance of the Yosemite National Park with 0.25 hot mix asphalt. And the project will extend the service life and provide a smoother riding surface. Additional scope of work included in this project includes some ITS elements and cobalt work. So we will be replacing detector loops for our traffic monitoring stations near Bryceburg Road and also near Height Mines Road. And in addition to that, we will be doing some modifications to the existing closed circuit television system at post mile 30.89. Regarding the culvert work, existing drainage facilities will be replaced at 11 locations, and a new drainage system will be installed at post mile 43.80. So existing non-standard dike and rock slope protections will also be upgraded in this project. Anticipated construction target date is the fall of 2022. So depending on weather conditions, it may go into winter suspension until spring of 2023. However, with the additional scope of work, they may be able to get started in the fall. Lane closure windows include 1-lane closures with reverse traffic from 7 to 4 during the day. And traffic handling will be the one-way traffic control with both lanes open at the end of the day. Working days for this project is approximately 150 days, so it will go through one construction season. And with that, I will, Alan will continue with his presentation regarding the Ferguson slide.
Thanks, Mimi. All right, so Ferguson Rockshed status. We pick up where we left off back in 2015 when the slide event happened. We weren't expecting to have a slide event midway through construction. So since then, we brought in slide experts to study the characteristics of the slide, and we wanted more information to develop a plan to enhance the safety of the project. So we've reevaluated our design and incorporated some innovative ideas to deal with a potential slide event during construction. So we want to be able to have a plan to move forward no matter what. And so currently our target for the talus removal is summer of 2020. We anticipate within the next month or two. We're currently finalizing our negotiations with the contractor's bid. So this talus removal is going to span 2 construction seasons. What we plan for this construction season, the 2020 season, is to set up some monitoring systems on the side where incline road is to monitor the slide for a month, just to see what it's doing currently. After a month, we'll have a good idea of what the slide is doing. We plan to do some trim blasting, probably around September, October. And trim blasting is the outcropping of rocks or material that looks like it's going to come down. We're gonna go ahead and bring it down. And we're gonna let the slide rest over the winter and monitor it. And we'll come back in the 2021 season. I'm anticipating mid-April. And we're gonna start doing the talus removal. So we won't see too much truck traffic until next April. And actually our contractor's out there today just to do a site visit. And with that, the next season is just going to be prepping the site for the rock shed. And currently we don't have funding for the rock shed, but we do plan to obtain that fairly soon. And so with that, our plan is to go out to spring of 2022 to begin construction of the rock shed. Okay, so part of our studies the last few years is that Caltrans and our contractor have created a safety plan which utilizes the latest technology. It's a very complex flow chart, if you see here, but basically it consists of 7 different methods to monitor the slide. You know, some of those methods we're going to be using slide scanning equipment, which is used in the mining industry. We're going to be using the latest surveying equipment. We'll show you in the next 2 slides. And we'll be doing periodic field observations. We'll be monitoring water table levels and interpreting rainfall data and earthquake data on a daily basis. And so these data is gonna help us determine if for that day, if it's safe for manned equipment and manned work. And if it's not, then we have to reevaluate and see if we can bring in our remote controlled equipment, which is new for this project. And if the conditions are just not favorable for any work, we'll have to shut down and monitor the slide. One of the most important monitoring systems that we'll be using is the slope stability radar. This is a piece of equipment that is there 24/7. It scans every 2 minutes. It's really, really quick in processing the information. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a 3D model, and areas that are red, orange, yellow, those are hot spots these are areas that are moving relatively faster than the surrounding area. So we'll want to pay attention to that, and this will allow us to make a decision whether it's safe working conditions or not. The next piece of equipment is also a very, very new piece of technology is the automatic total station. Back in 2015, we had a survey crew go out every 2 weeks to shoot reflectors on the slide. And these are monuments that are installed in the slide that are there. And what we do is we will get the elevations of these reflectors every day. And with comparing data from the previous day, we can see if the slide is moving, and if it is, how much is it moving. And this total station will be on site 24/7, and it can automatically function and take these readings. Okay. And so for the rock shed, I mentioned earlier, what's new about this go around is that we'll be using remote controlled equipment. Remote control equipment in the construction industry is something that is fairly new. We have GPS guidance, but remote control by a person quite a few distance away using an iPad essentially is new, is typically used in the mining industry and defense purposes. And so for the talus removal, we're going to have the contractor test it out. It's included in part of the plan when we can't work with manned equipment. And we hope to fully integrate it into the rock shed in 2022. Also, what's new about the rock shed is that we're planning to construct it in segments outside the slide zone and push them into place. And this is something that is typical for bridge structures, but this will be a first in the United States for a rock shed. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share a video you all can see here. And this is what Caltrans has. This is our bulletproof plan. This we can be able to construct during a slide event. And the nice thing about this is that it's fully protected everything is done inside the rock shed. The drawback is that we are inching away 15 feet at a time, so it does take quite a long time. This method takes about 4 to 5 years to construct. It is our probably the method that has the least amount of exposure, but it is our plan currently. Recently, this is a first here. We've recently looked at a revised method to take on additional risk, and we're going to evaluate it if it's a smart way to construct the project. But this method here will reduce the construction duration by 2 seasons. And we know that that's important for the community to open up full access as soon as possible. And I'll go ahead and show it as we go here. So here we're removing talus, we're widening into the river. And the difference with this is we're constructing the base first. And we're doing all of this unprotected. Using our safety plan, we're going to determine if it's safe working conditions, and then we'll go ahead and jack these segments into place. And this is a very promising method of construction in that it bridges the cast in place rock shed and the method previously shown as the most conservative method. And so we hope to have a determination by November of this year. And so we can proceed with our preferred design. And so here's some renderings of the rock shed. These were created with the input from the locals back in 2014. We had an advisory design committee, and it ties into the railroad and historic heritage with input from the local Indian tribes as well, Native American tribes. Okay, so if you have any questions on the Ferguson Rocks slide, you can contact Warren or myself. And with that, we'll go ahead and open to questions and answers.
Thank you, Warren, Alan, and Charlie, and Mimi for your presentation. So we do have one, so if you do have questions, what we have asked, just to be able to keep everything going smoothly, is to put it into the chat. I will try to help moderate as best I can. So bear with me as we go through this. But we do have a question from Jamie Richards that's directed at Mimi with regard to the duration of the work for the East Whitlock to L portal, and exactly what month will the work begin and what time of day will work be expected, and do you know start and end times for the work yet, and many employees commute through this stretch of 140. So Mimi, hope you're unmuted.
Yes, I just did, and I also replied in the chat. So construction anticipated to be fall of 2020. Oh, I'm sorry, I put 2020 in the chat. It is fall of 2022 in about October. That's what's on the project schedule. The lane closure window is daily from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. with reverse traffic control. But at the end of the day, both lanes will be open. I don't know if there's any additional information that I could provide at this time. If you would like, I can get back with the designer and get more information as needed.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Any further questions for the Caltrans crew? Okay, we do have a question. Could someone from Caltrans describe the shortest possible closure timeframe for the Ferguson project? Anybody from Caltrans want to answer that? Warren?
I'm unmuted. There's Warren's unmuted.
Okay. Alan can certainly jump in.
I'll
We're not,
unmute.
okay, Alan, I'll defer to you.
We'll wait for Alan to get, there we go.
Yes, definitely. So for the talus removal and the rock shed, we are not anticipating any closures of State Route 140. I don't know if I'm capturing the intent of the question correctly, but we are utilizing the existing temporary signal. You know, we've had concerns. We've heard from several residents and people that we need to remind our truck drivers to be courteous and pull over so that we let platoons of vehicles go first. And we will do that. We will continue to preach that to them this go around. But yeah, we're not advertising this project as causing major significant delays. We'll be utilizing the temporary signal.
Okay. We do have a follow-up question with regard to that, Alan, which you may be the one. Was a tunnel ever considered instead of the shed?
Yeah, definitely. So the shed is kind of like a pseudo tunnel. We did consider a fully like a typical tunnel, and what we ended up discovering was that the more we cut into the slide, or the more we cut into the mountain, it would cause all the material up at the top to be more unstable. There would be more risk, and the project would be more costly. And so, you know, with the rock shed, we're trying to minimize as much cut into the slide as possible. And that's why we're going with the rock shed. It's a method that we know we can get it out as soon as possible. It has the least amount of risk, and we can control the timeline.
Any other questions? Anybody? We do have a question. Does Caltrans have a rough cost estimate for the overall project? And I assume that's related to the Ferguson project.
Yeah, that's a great question. So with the final negotiations, our talus removal package will be somewhere around 22 million. And our preliminary cost for the rock shed right now, it really depends on the method of construction that we are going to be doing. So for the most conservative method of construction, the rock shed will be close to 200 million. And with the method I showed after that, where we construct the base first, there's probably savings of about 40 to 50 million. So really excited to look into the second method. It opens up a lot more possibilities of opening the route earlier, and it's also a nice savings for us.
Okay, Alan, I have a follow-up here. It says, how many truck trips of materials per day, and where will the trucks take the material?
We've negotiated with the Mariposa County landfill. They'll be taking it there, and we're looking to take about 2,000 tons per shift. So that's 2,000 tons of material per day on average, and each truck can carry about, I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, it's either 19 tons. There's a legal limit, and it also depends on the material. But the goal is about 2,000 tons per day.
All right. Any other questions that we have a few more minutes here before we're going to go into the next part of our quarterly meeting presentations.
I do want to add that, you know, with the Ferguson project, this first part, we're bringing a lot of work into the area. We'll be setting up a trailer on site, so prospective workers, feel free to stop by the trailer. We'll be having a sign-up sheet for anyone who's looking to be a part of the project. And, you know, these are people, we expect 50 people to be staying in the area for lodging, spending money on food and expenses. So it's going to be a nice little boost.
Yeah, I'll add also, Jeff, one thing that we've discussed, and I think this was Jonathan Farrington's idea, was the opportunity for some interpretive displays to help the public see this project. It is the first of its kind and probably the largest public works project, if not since Half Dome was built, at least since Highway 140 was constructed. So it's a big project. It's going to be a real flagship project for Caltrans and something I think people are going to have a lot of interest in. So we're going to look for opportunities to do some interpretive displays, whether that's with the park or at the visitor center, tours, anything we can think of that'll help people understand this project better.
Great. All right.
Yeah, I love that. We'll have a camera set up on site to at the end result, we'll have a time-lapse video from begin to end. And, we do plan on bringing more public outreach and making this the special project that it is for the public.
Great. We'll take one more quick question, and if there are other questions, I know Warren put up in the general group chat his phone number and email, but I have a question with regard to if Caltrans has discussion with job opportunities with mother lode job training. I'm not sure who might want to answer that.
I was actually responding to another question online. So I think you were asking if we have worked with Motherlode Job Training on some of the to create opportunities. I'm not sure that we have. We have an Office of Small Business that does a lot of outreach to local contractors and tries to create opportunities for small businesses that can actually subcontract with some of the bigger contractors. I think your suggestion's a great one, and I'll share that with our small business team in particular, but see if there are some other ways that we can reach out to Motherlode Job Training as well.
Great. All right. Well, I think what we'll do is proceed to our next part of our presentation. And again, I want to thank Caltrans, Warren, Charlie, Alan, and Mimi for your time and presentations. We truly do appreciate that, particularly under a whole new different format that everybody's been getting accustomed to the last few months. But thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Jeff.
We'd like to move on to the next part of our meeting, which is for our Yosemite National Park staff members to share with us over the next until our closing. And so I think what I might do is turn it over to Scott and let him proceed. So if you could unmute Scott, that would be great.
Just trying to find him.
And so Scott, I'll just turn it over to you and Jamie and let you guys kind of introduce who you have and how you're going to proceed. So I'm letting you take the reins.
Scott, can you put in the chat where your name is? I cannot see who you are within the chat area. Here we go. I think we might have found this. Okay, Scott, you should be unmuted. There we go. Scott?
Okay.
We'll also unmute Jamie. Jamie, you're unmuted as well.
Great. If you could please unmute the Yosemite National Park one. Scott is on as Yosemite National Park.
Yes. That one does not have audio on it. It only has a merge with audio. Is it a phone number 02?
Hold on. I'm walking down the hall. Please stand by.
Oh, here we go. Scott is at 209. Here we go. Perfect. Merging. Okay. Scott.
Hold on. We are walking into the admin lobby.
There, and Scott should be unmuted now.
Okay, are we good? Can you hear me? This is
There we
Scott
go. We
Kennedy.
can hear you.
All right, good morning. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, just in the Murphy's Law department, the internet went out in our building about 9:30, so we're having to patch some stuff together. But anyways, great to see everybody, and thank you to Les, and thank you for your service as President, Les. You've done a wonderful job, and we appreciate it. And welcome, Jeff. We look forward to working with you. We've got a great presentation this morning. As folks know, with our reopening in the day use reservation system, there's been a lot of great information that we've learned and we've experienced. And so what we've done is we have some slides we're going to go through, and we have a variety of speakers. I just want to go through who's going to be speaking. And just so I don't forget, please put your questions in the chat. And Jamie Richards, as folks know, my partner, is going to go ahead and moderate the questions at the end of the discussion. So our speakers are going to be Cicely Muldoon, who's the acting superintendent here in Yosemite National Park. We also have Nicole Athern. Nicole is our Chief of Resources Management and Science here in the park. You'll be hearing from Kathleen Morse, who's our Chief of Strategic Planning and Special Projects, and Kathleen will talk about some of the numbers. We'll have David Miyako, and David is our Chief of Business and Revenue Management, who will talk about some of the lodging and entrance station operations. And then we'll have George Carroll, and George Carroll is our Public Health Consultant with the U.S. Public Health Service. And George, as many of you know, is based here in Yosemite and has been a wonderful wonderful mentor and guide for us throughout the COVID situation. So again, we're going to go ahead and do the presentations. Please put your questions in the chat, and Jamie will moderate that after. So without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Cicely Muldoon.
Thanks, Scott. I'm just sending him 6 feet away while I get the microphone. Hey, everybody, thank you very much for making time for us today. We are pretty happy to be giving our first presentation about a month into our reopening of how everything is going over here in this very extraordinary summer we're having. So what we would like to do today, as you can see on the screen, is just review where we were a month ago as we talked to you about our reopening plan, talk about the results we've gotten to date, and what might be coming next. We'll go to the next slide, Nicole. So just as a reminder where we were as we were making reopening plans about a month ago, over the past few months actually. Of course, our primary goal in any kind of reopening was to protect public health and safety, both the public that visit us, the public in our gateway communities, and our own employees who are here in the park. We remain very happy to be completely aligned with the Yosemite Gateway Area Coordination Team, which you all probably know is made up of elected and health officials and public safety officials from all of our gateway counties of Mariposa, Mono, Tuolumne, and Madera, and also the Stanislaus National Forest. So we have been working very hard to stay in full alignment all across the board as a region so that we can manage this difficult situation as best as we can. We were eager to reopen for many reasons. Parks are important right now, I think, for just public health and sanity to get outside, but also, of course, important to our gateway economies to get some level of opening at Yosemite National Park. We had hoped and continue to hope, and I think we're doing a little bit of adapting this plan as we go. It's an adaptive recovery plan. We wanted to gather some pretty rigorous data and make adjustments and be nimble as the summer progressed. So we'll talk a little bit in a minute about the kind of data we have brought in so far. And of course, our goal is to sustain access to the park. We do not want to get into a situation where we have to shut down again if the virus comes raging through here and we lose our basic ability to operate. So we have taken a lot of precautions to preclude that from happening. We go to the next slide, Nicole. So as you all know, we're doing something sort of extraordinary during this pandemic, which is a day use reservation system at Yosemite. This was really predicated on a concern from local health officials and echoed by the Public Health Service that if the virus really hit hard here in Yosemite Valley and Yosemite National Park, that it would completely overwhelm the local healthcare system. So we wanted to work in close partnership with our communities out there to not allow that to happen. We didn't want to overwhelm the gateways in many ways, both the healthcare system and then the services available out in the gateways. We wanted to offer a little bit of certainty and predictability of what visitation would look like this summer. And we wanted to gather data in a pretty rigorous way so we could adjust up or down as necessary based on what the virus is doing and how the visitors were coming to the park and how it was all working. And of course, we want to reduce any close contact between anybody really, but between gate staff in particular and visitors to be able to keep those gate staff healthy and operating the front line and operating the park. Next slide, Nicole. So just as a reminder, we reopened on June 11th. Our plan was to target about 50% of what June traffic usually looks like based on 2019. So that allows for about 3,600 vehicle entries a day. With day use, our day use reservation system is for 1,700 vehicles per day and overnight 1,900 vehicles per day. The different ways one can get into the park are through the day use reservation system or with a campground reservation or an overnight reservation at a concession operated lodging, backcountry wilderness permits, and of course the half-dome permit system is operating as normal. There's also overnight short-term lodging available in Walona and Foresta and Yosemite West, and folks can come in on yachts or in small commercial tours. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen Morse, who's going to get into the real data of what's going on.
Okay, hi everybody. So Cicely described the starting point we were attempting to achieve with our initial reservation program, 3,600 vehicles per day entering the park. So now I'm going to show you how well the system has performed so far meeting this objective. So recall that we had discussed the valley as the limiting factor due to the fact that roughly 70% of visitors go there. Our starting point for the reservation program then takes roughly half of the vehicle load we see in the valley on a typical June and escalates that up to account for visitors that go elsewhere in the park. So on this, the left two bars show daily vehicle entries in the valley in blue and the park, orange, during a typical June. The middle group of bars shows what we are trying to achieve with the initial reservation program. So you can see it's about half the typical June vehicle entry. The set of bars to the right is the new news and shows what we have observed since the reservation program has been fully operational from June 20th to July 4th. We're using this time period, although we opened earlier than that, to account for the fact that we needed to capture visitors re-entering the park and we needed to allow time for the 48-hour reservations to kick in. So this time period is a good representation of full operations. As you can see, we are slightly above what we are planning for on average to achieve. Interestingly, the valley is only 4% over our plans, while the park is 13% over. This shows that visitors are dispersing throughout the park, which reduces the concentration of impacts in some areas of concern. That being said, there are some important caveats. First, recall Cicely mentioned we are planning on there being a fairly even split between overnight and day use vehicles, 1,900 and 1,700. While the park, but we did not know that the reentry rate from day use visitors in the park was going to be during the course of their 7-day reservation period. This was a big unknown. We knew people would come back repeatedly. They weren't sure how often or when they would exercise that option. So as it turns out, we're seeing a lot of return day use entries based on parking lot surveys we've done of windshield reservation permits. So this means we're overshooting the 1,700 day use figure fairly continuously because of those repeat entries. So we're finding this information out, and that's a good thing. That's something we needed to plan for the future. In contrast, though, we're seeing fewer overnight guests than we originally thought. This is in part due to the state's 24-hour rule on lodging occupancy. As a result, the overall numbers come out fairly close to what we planned, but the balance is not what we expected. So next slide. The next slide is going to show you some of the dynamics of the system as it is adjusting. It takes time for folks to learn and respond to new rules and for information to get out to the general public about how the system operates. Here you can see two important things, and this is how the slide is arrayed. It goes from left to right from the 15th of June to the 4th of July. Each bar represents total vehicle entries into the park. The orange line is what we were targeting, the 3,600 number. Notice how over time, every day basically increases. From left to right, you can see all days are gradually increasing in terms of entries. Part of this can be explained by more wilderness permits being issued and available, which increases the overnight component over time. It may also reflect folks becoming more aware of the fact that the lodging in the park equates to entry, and they're capitalizing on that. Second, notice importantly how weekends are consistently higher in terms of vehicle entry. In fact, as Nicole will explain later, only about half of the visits on a Saturday, Sunday are the first entry for the vehicle. So this means the demand for latter parts of the week is higher, or at least it's being realized as higher than earlier parts of the week. This means that visitors are staying over and taking advantage of the 7-day term of the reservations. So this is not something new. As always, as you all know, weekends are our most popular days. But notice that last weekend in particular, it showed an entry level of 30% above that planned for Friday and Saturday. Those are the last two bars on the graph. So you can see it's higher on weekends. Those are the spikes above the orange, and it's getting increasingly higher over time. This is something we need to monitor and watch out for as the reservation program continues. So the next slide, remember we talked about looking at the valley for setting the numbers because it's a limiting factor. A lot of folks go there, most folks go there. We're also monitoring high use or micro destinations, since we know certain areas are more popular and get a higher proportion of use. These include the Yosemite Falls area, Mirror Lake, Mist Trail, Glacier Point, Mariposa Grove, etc. All those popular visitor nodes. So we're seeing changes in use patterns. The biggest being that visitors are going directly to their destinations. This means that places like Curry Village and areas in the far east of the East Valley fill up rapidly as they try to gain access to their favorite trails. And we see a lot more concentrated use level than we've seen in the past, more than usual in these areas. Without a lot of international guests and reduced interstate travel, we're also seeing a high percentage of Californians coming to the park. Many of these folks already know the park. They know their goals and they drive immediately to their known destinations. This is also a function of the lack of shuttles. Folks know where they need to go and they can take their car there and they don't have to worry about the shuttle and all the other loops that people typically need to go through when parking is very busy and the park is very busy. So Nicole is now going to share some of what we're seeing from our site monitoring program and dig a little deeper and dive deeper into the detail.
So the park is using an adaptive management approach to the day use reservation system. And the reason that we're doing that is because this is a way for us to acknowledge that there are certain things that we don't understand about daily visitor use patterns under the current pandemic conditions, but also being able to move forward with starting to allow usage in the park and then being able to monitor the system and being able to understand how we can make adjustments over time and be responsive to that new information that comes in. So adaptive management is basically a way for us to focus on achieving our park level goals. So our human health and safety, our maximizing visitor access given human health and safety and resource protection. And in order to achieve those goals, the lever that we have right now is to adjust the number of day use visitors. And so that is the focus of sort of the initial phase of the monitoring program. We are monitoring the conditions in the park and also monitoring the level of visitation in the park, so that as we learn more, we can potentially adjust and adapt the number of day use vehicles in order to better meet our goals of both maximizing visitor access and maximizing human health and safety component. The questions that we're trying to answer in the adaptive management program are, how many visitors do we see for a given number of day use passes offered? So what we need to know besides just the number of passes that we're offering, is how many visitors are returning after that initial visit on their 7-day pass. How many days will they return? Does this differ by day of the week? And then in addition to the number of visitors in the park, we also need to understand how many visitors the park can safely support. So monitoring is a key component of this process, and we're focused on answering these questions so that we can better estimate how many visitors we're actually seeing when we offer a certain number of passes. That may differ by day of the week. And also to assess how well our park operations are going given our limited staffing and our need to support safe levels of crowding, vehicle traffic, restroom cleanliness, and trash containment. So the monitoring system has 3 levels. We're really focused on 3 different levels of monitoring in the park. The first level is the reservation system itself. So given that we're offering up a certain number of passes to the public, how many passes are we seeing being used each day? So how many vehicles do we actually see in the park for a given level of passes that we're offering? And that really depends on those return rates. The second level of operations monitoring that we're doing is looking at how well we're able to maintain safe conditions in the park. So in particular, in popular park locations, under the current level of condition, current level of visitation, how is the condition of the park? And then the third level is really focused on, we're focused on staying safe to stay open. And the third level is on sustained visitor access. How can we stay open by staying safe? How can we look forward to understand that if we're going to be able to sustain our current level of staffing to support the visitation that we have? Do we have supplies available, particularly things like cleaning supplies and PPE to help us maintain those safe operations? And finally, are the conditions outside the park and in the park, but outside the park and the local communities, are they conducive to the current level of park visitation? Or do they support additional or reduced visitation? So these are all concerns that we have to think about when we're thinking about making adjustments to our day use reservation system. And I just wanted to walk you through quickly just some of the different monitoring approaches that we're using. We're actually using quite a few. For the level 1 monitoring, where we're trying to get that information about how many vehicles are actually in the park, our data are mainly coming from the entrance gates, but we're also doing things like using the traffic counters that Kathleen showed the data for from last June and this June, and also parking lot surveys, which let us go in and look at the vehicles in the park at any given time and understand what proportion of those vehicles have a reservation that was for the day of the visit versus a day that started prior to the visit. And that helps us understand the revisit rates, particularly in the crowded valley. The site conditions monitoring also has a couple of different approaches. One approach is that we have dedicated site monitors set up as Yosemite employees for 17 representative sites. And we also have employee reports that any employee can report information to us on conditions that they're seeing in the park. And what that looks for specifically is levels of crowding, trash containment, restroom cleanliness, and traffic. And it puts it on a red, blue, green scale. But the idea is that blue is where we want to be. This is where conditions are about right. And then green would mean we could support more visitors, and red would mean that we are a little overextended and we need to change operations or support fewer visitors. And in this particular case, this is the kind of reference photos for crowding. The idea is that if you were a visitor going into this scenario, would you be able to maintain social distancing without running into other people, not maintaining social distancing, or needing to step off trails or into unsafe areas or into areas where resources are being damaged in order to maintain social distancing? So we'd see that could be done fairly well in the blue category, but you wouldn't want it to be much more crowded. But in the red category, it would be very hard for somebody coming in to maintain that social distancing. So we have similar criteria set up for the other 4 parameters. And the third level of monitoring sustained visitor access, we have set checkpoints for critical work groups. So do those critical work groups that supply necessary functions for the park have adequate staffing, supplies, supervision, facilities, and administrative support? And is there anything pending in the future that looks like that could be threatened? Also, the availability of PPE and cleaning supplies. And finally, looking for public health guidelines and local community services that are supportive of the visitation levels in the park. So what does this look like in the valley? So this is the same map that Kathleen showed about the kind of areas of interest in the valley, and we have a few additional sites on this map as well. But the idea is that if we're in the blue, red, or green category, we could set this up as an index. Where blue is 0, and that's really where we want to be. If we look at the average site index on weekdays versus weekends, we can see that several sites are staying in the blue-green category, and several other sites are more in the blue-red category. And what this looks like on the ground is, a place like Tunnel View, we have some people wearing masks, some people not wearing masks, some people, this is, a fairly light day at Tunnel View, and we haven't had a whole lot of crowding there, mainly because we think most of that visitation comes from large buses and where there's a lot of people dropped off at that site at once. So it's not too surprising that it's not too crowded there. The Bridal Veil Strait area hasn't been bad either, but Bridal Veil is closed for construction right now. So mainly what we're looking at is traffic conditions outside that area where people can take photographs of Bridal Veil. On the beach areas in the valley, we've seen be fairly well used, even with the reduced visitation. Not only are people flocking to the beach because it's lovely to spend the day in cold water when it's the hot summer day, but also we're seeing some traffic conditions because the shuttle buses aren't running. And so there are more traffic conditions around these parking areas near the beaches. And we're seeing pretty good usage of the beaches. It's fairly crowded given the overall level of park visitation. We are also looking at other sites that tend to be crowded all the time because they're very popular as attention draws. And one of those is Lower Yosemite Falls. The Lower Yosemite Falls, these are kind of the typical conditions. These aren't the worst or the best that we've been seeing, but this is pretty typical of what we're seeing at Yosemite Falls. There's still a lot of people enjoying the falls and being able to social distance a little bit, but still, having some situations where people are still climbing out on rocks and getting close to one another in certain areas. And finally, there are other areas. The mist trail during the week, we haven't had many reports outside of the blue. It's always in the blue or the red though. And 100% of the time we have been out there on a weekend to do a survey. It's been in the red category. And it's just the nature of the trail. It's narrow, it's steep. There's an additional consideration for the mist trail that besides just regular crowding and trash in bathrooms, but we're also looking at the ability of people to use the trail and not make unsafe choices in order to avoid getting too close to other people. So that's something we're considering as well. In general, we're learning a lot so far. We still have a lot of data to collect, and it's a little bit of extra work for our current staff. So we're getting a pretty good amount of data. And about what we're learning is that about half of the visitors that are in the park on a Friday and a Saturday started their reservation earlier in the week. So that means that even though they're offering 1,700 passes on every day of the week, we're seeing that in the weekends, at least, the visitation is really about twice that, because the people that are coming in are largely from earlier in the week and stayed later and perhaps in the communities, came back to visit on the weekends. And what we've also learned from that is that if we offer additional passes on any day of the week, we are going to see increased weekend visitation. So we have to consider that. We also have learned that from the traffic data, as well as our observational site conditions data, that earlier days in the week tend to have fewer visitors than other weekdays. And it's especially true for Monday and Tuesday. And you could see that with Kathleen's traffic counter pattern that kind of did this between weekends. We have a mixture of red and green sites. And what that tells us is that some of the red sites, they're just the more crowded areas. They're the popular attractions. Lots of people want to use the mist trail. Almost everybody who visits the valley for the first time is likely to visit Lower Yosemite Falls. And so there are some sites that are just popular no matter what the level of visitation in the park. And others that are green, indicating that they're just less popular. People are just preferentially crowding towards some popular sites in favor of other sites. But we also have a lot more blue sites where the conditions are stable, about right where we would want them. And that's a little bit surprising given the reduced visitation, but we're seeing a lot of areas like that where there's little or no parking and lots of visitors. And it suggests that, like we thought might happen, visitor patterns are different than they happened before. And part of that is likely due to the shuttle bus not running. But also, we may have more people who are planning their trips to stay outside the park and revisit, back in. So how the data can be used. So when decisions are made about adjusting day use passes, the way that it could be used is, because we're getting this information on revisit rates for different days of the week, we can use the information that we've collected to feed into our model to better understand how the pass availability would differ by day of the week in order to level out visitation. So if we were to offer different numbers of passes on specific days of the week, then could maximize the overall weekly access while maintaining sustainable operation, and particularly reducing that impact on the weekends, because the weekends are always going to be more crowded. But we do need still a little bit more data on visitor return rates for that. We're also learning from the data if the green, blue, and red conditions are site-specific or park-wide. What that means is that if we're seeing just a particular site is consistently in the red category, no matter what the level of visitation, that tells us that's not a matter of having too many people in the park. That's a matter of the particular operations of that site, or just the attractiveness of that site. And so if we wanted to deal with that, we need to take some sort of site-specific action. Whereas if the conditions are consistent across the park, then that tells us that we would need to consider adjusting park-wide visitation. Also, we can use that number to estimate the specific numbers of passes to increase or decrease based on site conditions and existing visitation levels. So we can use that to really understand what level of impact we would expect the increased passes to have on a weekend, and how we could adjust passes so that we could balance out that visitation through the week. But all of that is considering day use passes at the current level of lodging. And so if lodging changes at all, then that's going to impact the availability of the park and the park site conditions. So I'm going to turn it over to David to talk about lodging.
I will unmute David just shortly here. Let me find his name. Nicole, do you know if David's name is something other than David in presenter mode, or as a...
No, I'm actually looking
right
at him.
Right now.
Yeah.
David, found you. There we go. You're unmuted.
Hi. It's nice to be unmuted. Thanks, everyone. So as Nicole mentioned, one of the things that we are looking at is, overall utilization of the park. But another thing is that mix between overnight accommodations and day use. So what we're seeing right now is the campsites that are open are fully utilized. Everyone wants to go camping. And so those are being occupied at 100% occupancy rate. The lodging that is operated by the concessionaire is a little different story. They're averaging about a 63% occupancy rate. And that's driven primarily by the order from the county public health officer to leave rooms vacant for 24 hours between occupants. And that's for the lodging that's open, the Wani, Yosemite Valley Lodge, and Half a Crate Village. And so, people are still coming, but the order is making the concession run lodging a little less. That's really all I had to say. Now I'll turn it over to Cicely to talk about some successes.
Okay, thanks, David. Catch up with where we are. So just to sort of reiterate what the team has been talking about, our real goal is to stay safe so we can stay open. And I would say on that front, so far so good, absolutely. No reported cases among the staff here yet. Staff is still healthy. That's excellent news for us. We are welcoming about 11,400 visitors a day, which is it's busy here. It's not like you would normally see it in June, but if you've been in here on a weekend, it's a busy place and people are having a good experience in the park. The gates have largely been able to keep up with the demand, with some overcrowding on the weekends. And I would just make a plea to any of you out there, since you're all our friends and neighbors, if you're coming into the park, please say a nice word to the gate staff, because they are bearing the brunt of people who are not so happy, who haven't made a reservation and can't get into the park, and the gate staff has to deal with a certain amount of hostility around that, and they're doing it with their usual grace. That's David's team, so I wanted to give them a shout out. So basically, our system is achieving what we had hoped. We're still open and we're still safe, and the visitors are having a good experience. It hasn't been without some glitches with rec.gov and the reservation system, but by and large, we're selling out and people are having a great time in the park. We're getting very good feedback from the visitors who are making it in. And I think we're gonna have George Carroll, and who will need to be unmuted. George is our Public Health Service Officer stationed here in Yosemite National Park, and he's just going to talk a little bit about the status of the virus.
Yeah, thank you, Cicely. Yeah, I kind of wanted to start out by saying it seems like destiny. I'm here with you all today. I think it was back in February. Jamie had asked me to possibly come in and talk about the public health office within the Park Service and what we do. Here under different circumstances, unfortunately, but glad to be here regardless. So the slide that's up right now is actually from yesterday. And so as we're seeing with this virus, you know, we're seeing trends, we're seeing concerning trends. I think the biggest piece here, you know, we're getting close to 12 million cases globally, over 3 million now within the United States, and getting close to 300,000 here within California. And so just understanding, you know, the relation to hospitalization rates, fatality rates, and the lag of those numbers behind this case surge. We know these are an undercount, and I think, you know, looking at this slide specifically, obviously LA jumps off at us, but we, as you heard, as mentioned earlier with the area coordination team, we are looking at our surrounding counties very closely, working with those health officers and all the support staff there to monitor this, and just I think that area coordination being so critical for our response as a region to this, and just really ultimately feeling fortunate that we have that in place. So just a little more context, my role within the park here is responding to reports of illness, potential exposures, and just ensuring appropriate actions for any case, whether that's an exposure or a potential case, and making, you know, a lot of education of staff and making sure people understand isolation versus quarantine, what to do in those situations. But I just wanted to mention, you know, we appreciate all the feedback that we get. I get a lot of emails and phone calls from people, concerns they have, observations within the park, or issues they're seeing, maybe even out of the park, that could affect us. So just please, we encourage you to reach out to me. I can share my contact info, but we really appreciate the feedback. And again, I'll be on for questions here shortly. So thank you.
Thanks, George.
Yeah.
So just to wrap it up, we want to get to your questions, but our intent is to stay in frequent and strong communication with all of you out there. We're happy to bring this presentation to you first ahead of anyone else because of the importance of the Gateway Partnership. And we will make this available. We'll send it out to the partnership. So this will be available to anyone who wants to see it. We're going to continue to rigorously monitor conditions out there and collect data and crunch the numbers to see how things are working. As we can increase visitation, that's what we'd like to do. We want to give as many people access to the park as we can do so safely and continue to stay open. We're hopeful that this will just keep building and we all get to a place of a full reopening again in every aspect of our lives, and certainly here in the park. We're really appreciative of the Yosemite Gateway Area Coordination Team. As George said, I think this part of California, this region, is better organized than many places in the country in really working together as a group of counties and as Yosemite National Park and Stanislaus National Forest to really do everything we can to welcome people back and keep people safe. And now that the data collection is intent has been to work toward a real regular communication with you all. So we're working on, since we have regular data coming in now, perhaps a weekly communication we could send out just to give you the status of what's going on in the park and what it's looking like. This is our last slide. So we've made some minor tweaks in this first month of operations. We, based on some Gateway community feedback, we adjusted the number of releases in the 30-day out pool versus the 48-hour out number of reservations available pool. And we're just continuing to monitor and adjust. And that last bullet I've already told you a few times, so I won't read the slide to you, but we're staying tightly focused on the health of this region, and we want to do everything we can to support the economy while keeping people safe and keeping our doors open here in Yosemite. So I think with that, we can move to questions.
So Jeff, I'm going to unmute you. I'm going to let you moderate that Q&A like we discussed. And then Jamie, if you could stay unmuted from the National Park so that maybe you could help guide Jeff and I on who should be answering each question, that would be extremely helpful. So Jeff, you are unmuted. Shut off.
I'll let Jamie go ahead and probably do close to 15 minutes of the Q&A, and then we'll, just a courtesy for Indian close to noon, we'll conclude. But Jamie, go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you everyone for chatting your questions. I've been monitoring the thread, and I hope I've captured all of your questions. For the first question, we'll send to Cicely. Are there any plans to increase the number of day use passes to Yosemite? Small businesses are suffering, especially midweek. Would you consider increasing passes Sunday to Thursday?
We're definitely looking at every day of the week and trying to figure out what days we could increase visitation. Absolutely. As you may have seen in some of Nicole's slides, the visitation patterns are different during different days of the week. It's all going to be driven by if we think we can keep things safe. But if we can increase visitation, we're going to do it. We're not quite there yet based on the surge of everything going on out there with the virus, but we're watching that really closely. We share that goal with you.
All right, thank you. This is a question for Kevin Killian. Will the resident gate along Highway 41 be reopened?
I cannot answer that. I'm going to defer to David Miyako. He's in charge of the entrance stations. David, do you know the answer to that?
I think I need a little more context on what is referred to as the resident gate. If you're talking about Chowchilla Mountain Road in Wawona, I don't know that there is a gate there. That's kind of an unofficial entrance into the Wawona area. In terms of 41, the south entrance, that gate is not closed. It's an open gate. It's subject to all the same restrictions as the rest of the gates, but it's not closed.
Right. So if you have more questions about the resident gate along Highway 41, please feel free to either chat us more context or email Jamie_Richards, and we will work to get back with you. This is a question for Kathleen. Does the actual number of park-wide day use visitors that were included in the graph include the local pass-through users?
Yes, that includes all vehicle traffic. So there's pass-through, there's some admin traffic. That's the easiest and most replicable way we can get that data. We know it includes some of those, but we have factored that in making the reservation numbers.
Another traffic question, have the traffic counters been fixed at the south entrance?
I'm guessing that question's for Kathleen. She may have some information.
Kathleen or Dave, is that a Kathleen or David question?
Yes.
So the traffic counters are maintained by our Denver Service Center group. I know they are, short staffed as much as we are. I don't know the current status of that though. I don't know if Kathleen does.
All right, we will
I think
follow up on that. So
she
let's move
may
on
need
to
to
the
be
next
unmuted.
question. Let's move on to the next question. What
Amy,
is the park's policy? Oh, go ahead, Kathleen.
Oh, okay, so people are asking about the traffic counters at the south entrance. We're using an alternate traffic counter. We're using the two that are on Mawona Road, just north of the roundabout. Sorry, and two at Mariposa Grove. So it's not perfect, but the counter still has some loops that need to be repaired that will give us more accurate, specific numbers for the south entrance, but it's close enough. We can make some assumptions based on that data. So we are gathering numbers from the south entrance. They're not the perfect numbers from the traffic counter we'd like to be using, but we're looking to repair that as soon as we can.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next question. What is the park's policy on non-gateway resident travel across Tioga Road? There's a lot of confusion. Also, what is the policy on local pass-through traffic?
I think that's probably me. So local pass-through traffic it's the same as it has been. There's the zip code pass-through program, which is if you're one of the surrounding gateway communities, you tell the gates your zip code, you show them, and then you can pass through. In terms of the non-resident, so people that are not living in part of the gateways, we still have the messaging out that you need to be planning ahead, being able to drive through and access the park that way. The gate staff do have a little bit of leeway in the sense that they can issue special permits if there's some extenuating circumstance.
All right, thank you, David. This next question is probably for Cicely. This presentation showed that since 6/25, every day but one exceeded the vehicle entry target level. With COVID-19 surging in California, does the park honestly plan to take actions to bring visitor levels back closer to the planned target objective, or to instead simply keep monitoring most of the summer? What is realistic to expect?
For the moment, we're going to continue to monitor. We are in really close touch. You already heard from George on the call today, George Carroll from the U.S. Public Health Service, and with Dr. Sergienko and the Yosemite Gateway Area Coordination Team. As long as we're still in sync with local and federal public health officials, we haven't felt the need yet to dial it back down. And George, you could weigh into that if you like. But we are keeping a super close eye on it, of course, as long as we still have we have a healthy staff and we're able to provide what we consider a safe level of access based on all those monitoring slides you saw with kind of our blue, green, red scale. We're feeling pretty good about the approach we're taking.
Yeah, Cicely, this is George. I would agree with that. And just to add, I think the site monitoring is crucial, especially for those spots where we know that the physical distancing is an inherent challenge. So I think that's just a big factor in addition to all the local epidemiology.
And thank you. George, we have another question for you. Do you require visitors to wear masks, indoors or outdoors?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So we, I think the stance of the department is that we are not, we can't require this for visitors. All of the reasons I don't know are fully understood, but I think what we have on our side, being here in California, is we have the governor's order. We have businesses that for the most part want to do the right thing. And so I think that it's been the key for us there has been the messaging and phrasing it as an expectation for people, phrasing it as a piece of personal responsibility, and then trying to address issues as much as possible as we can. I think that the benefit is that it is required in California, and so we know that our visitors will likely have those with them. And so I think it's all about messaging and just trying to underscore the importance of that.
And we have another public health related question. Have there been any Yosemite visitors who have caught COVID-19 in the park? I believe you said no staff members have tested positive for coronavirus.
Yeah, so for visitors, we have not had any that have caught COVID-19 in the park, or at least like through public health investigation, that has not been an outcome. I think one of the questions initially is, would we know, or how quickly would we know if we were causing an issue in the visitor population? Just understanding how briefly people, the period of time they're in the park is fairly limited. And understanding exposures and incubation period of 14 days and what that looks like. We felt it was kind of unlikely that we would ever find that. We're aware of an instance where somebody had left the park and went back to their community, later tested positive, and kind of notified us just to make us aware. But the case investigation, I think the common thread here is that people are often coming from an area of higher community spread and coming to our little place here where we don't have that on the same level. So no, we're not aware of any of that yet. Is it completely unlikely? No, that it would happen in the future. And I think there are some good plans in place for identifying that, whether through the clinic in the park, through our weekly testing sites, or the testing site in Mariposa, and then just the coordination we have with the counties, even counties all throughout California, we work with on those. So yeah, no, we have not.
Thank you. And I have a question, I believe, for either Kathleen or Nicole. Do you have statistics on what percentage of visitors are being turned away because they do not have a reservation?
That would be a question for David. I don't believe we track those. Oh yes, he would have at least anecdotal, so that's a David question.
So we do have the turnaway cards that we have for people that come to the gate and then need to be turned away on site. We don't track the rec.gov people that are unable to get a reservation on rec.gov because there isn't any inventory available. Similar to campsites, we have the information about who has the campsite. We don't have the information about who doesn't get the campsite.
And here we have a comment for Park. Kudos and many thanks to Cicely Muldoon and her staff for the great job. Been in the park multiple times, very smoothly done. Thank you. So thank you for that comment. And our next question is, there's so much frustration and disappointment are either a requirement to validate on day one or be turned away. Is there any hope of flexibility on that rule to change anytime soon? I believe that's a David question.
Yeah, so we go back and forth on this a lot. We understand that there are legitimate reasons why someone may not be able to come on their first day. Oh, my car broke down. Oh, I had a medical thing pop up. Oh, my flight was delayed. We understand that, and we've developed a list of those reasons why people may potentially need to not or would not be able to come in on their first day. And so the gate staff are listening in terms of everyone's specific circumstance and allowing people in as as the situation warrants. But in general, the reason why we keep the first day requirement is because of the weekend phenomena that we're seeing that we talked about earlier, where we don't want people to just buy passes, for Monday, for example, not come for the whole week and then only come on Saturday and thus overload the weekend.
And I have another question for David. This is a rec.gov question. Is there a way to change the color on the monthly calendar for when passes are available? The blue could be changed to a different color so people know that they won't be available until 2 days before.
I sure wish there were. So recreation.gov is managed. That's not just a Yosemite site. That's a National Park Service site. It's managed by a contractor. And so that's for all parks across the country. We don't have the ability to change the calendar look. We know that there are issues in terms of display. So like people are getting confused about how availability is displayed and what's available and what's not. We're working with the rec.gov folks to fix that. Just this morning I got a message from them saying that July should be fixed. So it should show what is actually available and what's not, except for July 14th. For some reason, they were unable to fix that. This morning, it might be fixed later today, but it's a national site. We, don't have the ability to control the look and feel of it.
And thank you, everyone. We have time for one more question. And so the last question of today, this also goes to David regarding rec.gov. The reservation process to allow people who have annual senior passes needs attention. It appears easier to just pay the entrance fee than deal with how to get it into rec.gov.
We'll definitely take that feedback. Yeah, so the way it's supposed to work is you indicate if you have an annual pass or a golden age pass or some other pass, and then you pay the reservation fee, which is $2, and then you're supposed to be able to enter in your pass ID. We know that there are challenges with the rec.gov site, and we're continuing to work with our contractor to address those.
All right. Thank you, Jamie, for being an excellent moderator. We are at our time in which we said we would end at noon. I'm only going to take a few more seconds real quickly. One, and more importantly, is to say thank you to everybody who participated in our first virtual quarterly meeting. So we really appreciate your patience and understanding. We felt it as a board very important to continue the quarterly meetings. So we will see how the future goes and how that will look. But we do really appreciate you taking the time and being a part of it. And again, thank you for your patience as we kind of worked out the movement of presentations and people and questions and stuff. So I hope it was a benefit to you as it was for me. And just real quickly, I want to say thank you to our Cicely and the park staff for their presentation. We appreciate that greatly. And Warren and the Caltrans staff for your presentation and update on the road projects. And then again, to my good friend Les, do appreciate for your strong leadership over the last 3 years. So I appreciate that. Les will be staying, as he said, another year on the board. But I just wanted to quickly, since we weren't able to do introductions, not that we're going to go through and do introductions now, but just real quickly, your officers for this next year, besides my humble self being the president for the next year, and thank you. First vice president is going to be Don Harder. Second vice president is Jen Lopez. And then Candy O'Donnell Brown has continued as secretary, and Jonathan Farrington will be the treasurer. And our directors, you met Cole, who was doing a fabulous job of helping orchestrate the technical side of this whole thing, unmuting, muting people. Glenn Roberts, Susan Corcoran, Lisa Cicero, Brittany Dyer, Dakota Snyder, and of course Les. So I think with that, we do again appreciate everybody very much for participating. If you have any ideas or thoughts of how we might make it as it changes. But anyway, again, thank you everyone, and appreciate your participation today.
How are you? Great, how are you? You're so stylish. Thank you. Awesome. This is all right. Your greenery view. Yes, nice. That's the thing. You can see the courthouse park. Oh, yeah. Well, I can see that being eventful. Do you need any of these? No, we're good. Thank you. We have a lot of ones with Zach's mom made. She's very confident. Yeah, they're great. That's what I have. Can hold the door open. I have a mom made one as well. But mine is appropriately American flag.
Oh.
So people that don't like that can't get mad at me because I'm American. But then I am.
Oh, that's checking all the boxes.
I know.
Oh, your mom's thinking.
Politically safe, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you. I hope these are to your liking. They look great.
Awesome.
And yeah, next time you just listen.
Thank you.
Have a nice.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Okay.